On today's show, it has been a tough start for both San Diego and Boston. Red Sox Padres, though, they're facing off this weekend. One shall stand, one shall fall, and one shall be very miserable afterwards. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host with sometimes the most, Javier Reyes, joined by another co-host, the host of Locked On Red Sox, Gabby Maljanian. Today's episode, guys, though, really quickly, is brought to you by FanDuel. During the tournament, FanDuel is offering $300 back in bonus bets every day for 10 days. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. Before we get started with this crossover, Gabby, let me just ask, how did I do with the pronunciation of the last name? I feel like I messed it up.
Hey, you nailed it. That was awesome. I was waiting for it. I was like, wow, that was great. Good job.
I'm so bad at it on the first run through every single time I do it. Every single time. I don't know what it is. But everybody, we're going to be talking about Red Sox Padres this weekend, the fun afternoon series. If you're an East Coaster like myself, who is weirdly covering a West Coast team, then that's a nice fun treat. And always East Coast for Gabby. We're going to be talking about the general vibes of both teams, looking at the pitching matchups between both teams, which have been a whole story of itself, and then ask each other some fun questions, some different perspectives there. So, Gabby, first, let's start it, man. Let's do it. What's going on in Boston? Because I'm getting a lot of texts. All the people that I root against as an East Coaster, you know how it is out here, especially if you're from Jersey like myself. Everyone hates on Boston, and wherever I see people celebrating, some people are miserable. They're like, season's over. It's a must-win game, and we're on game 6. What's kind of going on with Boston? Because it's not like it's any better with San Diego, but I know that Boston, it has been a pretty tough start so far.
Yeah, it's always interesting because the Boston fan base definitely can be reactionary, to say the least. And, I have to keep reminding people it's still incredibly early on in the season. We have not even reached double digits yet in terms of how many games we've played in a 162 game schedule. But yeah, definitely not the ideal start that people wanted. Had a great win on opening day behind Garrett Crochet, and just nothing's been going right for this Red Sox team since. And going into this season, there was a lot of excitement surrounding this team, all the work they did in the offseason to really improve the pitching staff in particular going into this year. And it's just a situation right now where nobody's knowing where that excitement came from because they're not playing well at the moment. Just definitely not an ideal start. And people on Twitter are already giving up on the season. And I'm like, guys, calm down. We've got to chill here. But, I think the key is going back home, hopefully being in front of the home crowd, exciting home opener. Hopefully that'll kind of motivate this team a little bit and they can turn some things around, because there's just been a lot of things that have not been going right. The offense, they haven't been hitting well at all. And hopefully that turns itself around. And to me, I feel like this is more a reflection of they're just off to a slow start than they're a bad baseball team. And, every team goes through slumps during the season. And this is just feels like something where they started off slow, but hopefully they pick things back up. But yeah, it kind of feels like they've got to come out there and play well and win this series at home to kind of regain some of that confidence from everybody.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you mentioned offense. I mean, I do see Wilyer Abreu is going absolutely insane right now. What in God's? But I mean, good player. But other than that, yeah, it looks pretty tough so far. It's interesting. It's almost like getting rid of your 3 best offensive players the last 10 years might have an impact negatively on your offense. Who knows? I don't know.
Possibly,
I'm not.
maybe.
Yeah, I'm not. Whatever
had,
it's facing. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough out here. It happens. And then there's my team, which is also really struggling offensively. It does have its own rotation questions, but I think that the rotation questions were kind of expected for this Padres team, so nobody's really shocked. They have Michael King, they have Nick Pivetta, your boy, your former boy, who had a great start the other day against Detroit, 8 strikeouts, 1 hit allowed in 5 innings. He was great. So there's reason to believe he'll turn things around for sure, especially considering he finished 7th in Cy Young voting last year. And then you have guys like Joe Musgrove who are hurt. And then you have guys like Randy Vasquez, who we'll talk about in the pitching preview. But it's not surprising that there's a little bit of worry with the Padres starting rotation, some worry that I actually think is a little bit overstated. But the offense, I think a lot of people, they just see the names and they know the calls from another one of your boys, Don Orsillo, the Slam Diego thing and all that. But that has not been this team for a long time. And it has especially not been that way this year. It has been really, really bad offensively. Before their last game against the Tigers, they had not had one game in which they scored more than 3 runs. And in their last game against the Tigers, they scored 7, but 3 of them were dribblers and errors by Casey Schmidt, the first baseman of the San Francisco Giants, who just couldn't catch the ball, to which you might have even saw on Reddit. Matt Chapman be like, catch the effing ball. You might have even seen that clip go viral. That's kind of where the Padres have been at. They've been scraping by. They've been very, very aggressive. They're actually top 5 in chase rate right now, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but they have not been able to elevate the ball and put it in play. Xander Bogaerts, your third boy that I've now mentioned, doing very good so far. He's a mess for the Padres, and that is one of the most daunting things about talking about this team is Bogaerts just does not look like the same player he used to be. And for some reason, kryptonite is runners in scoring position for him. If it's bases loaded or bases empty, walk him. If it's second and third, nobody out, and it's a 3-0 count, throw it right down the middle. I promise you he's grounding out. Watching Xander Bogaerts so far. So those are kind of the general state of things, but it's the same thing as you said, right? Like, it's too early in the season. There are questions I have for certain players, some more than others. I think Tatis, his numbers don't show a lot right now, but hitting the ball hard, I'm not concerned about him. Jackson Merrill, he's in the cleanup spot. He's a beast. All of that's fine. And people are talking about firing managers already. Craig Stammen, he doesn't know what he's doing and all these things, which that comes with the territory of being a first-time manager. But it is the ultimate cliche that both of us are going to be talking about all week, regardless, I think, of the result of this series, absent injuries, giant trades, which wouldn't happen, but absent like genuinely like team shifting moves. We're still going to be saying it's so early, and there have been great teams that started off poorly, and there have been horrid teams that have started off very, very good. I remember that stretch where like the A's would start off like 9-1 every year. Well, guess what? They have been very good for a long time. So everybody needs to calm down, but at the same time, you don't want to ignore everything that you've seen so far. So it's a tricky proposition, really.
Yeah, because it's on one hand, it's like, wow, it's so early still. There's so much time still to turn things around. But on the other side of that, you can only do this for so long. Like, you can't start the season, on like a 1-20 skid or something crazy like that, or even like a 3-17 skid. You can come back from something like that, but it kind of feels like it's really difficult to gain momentum back at that point after that. And, this Red Sox offense, it primarily is a lot of what you said, getting behind in counts early, chasing pitches well outside the zone, and then staring at meatballs down the middle, and then just not having any sort of approach with 2 strikes has been a huge problem for this lineup up and down, really, that they've run into. And they can't score with runners on base either. They just can't hit at all when there's base traffic. And that's something that has been really troublesome to see early on here. And I mentioned this earlier, actually, on Twitter. I was like, it's not that this isn't a talented offense, is that their approach right now isn't great. The approach needs to change. And it was almost like in the first couple of games of the season, they were overly aggressive at the plate. They were just swinging at everything. And, it caused them to swing at pitches well outside the zone. And then they almost went the opposite extreme, where they were being too selective and not swinging at pitches they should be swinging at. So you almost have to find that balance between the two. And that's why I feel like this offense just needs to get going. I think they're just in a complete slump right now to start the season. Lots of guys just aren't playing up to their potential. And I mean, even Trevor Story, I mentioned him. I have some concerns about him. I mean, he was fully healthy last year for the first time in his Boston Red Sox tenure. And he was able to really have a good season. I mean, he was one of their most consistent hitters last year, led the team in home runs last year. And I said on my show during the offseason, Trevor Story is going to be a huge piece of this lineup going into this season. If he's able to perform at the same level he did last year, then this lineup is going to be competitive. But if he can't, and we kind of see him start to struggle the way that he did in previous seasons in Boston, this could be a long season for him. And early on, he has not started off great at the plate. Lots of swings and misses from him. So he's somebody I'm definitely looking to turn things around as this lineup looks to hopefully improve moving forward.
And hopefully he will continue to not improve. We'll be talking about some pitching maps as well. Trevor Story, 44% strikeout rate, no walks. Not the way you want to start off your season, but if you're a Padres fan, you hope that it continues. And we're going to continue talking about this series and talk about the pitching matchups to be expected from both of these teams, because there's a whole lot of story there as well. But speaking of stories, folks, you know it's a great story? March Madness. And the tournament is here, but not for much longer. One of the best times of the year, but brackets, buzzer beaters, the crazy St. John's one, the UConn one, all that stuff. And FanDuel is giving new customers to stay in on the action all tournament long. Here's the best part. You get up to $300 back in bonus bets every day for 10 days. That means 10 chances to stay involved throughout the entire tournament. You can mix it up however you want, game picks, futures, same game parlays, whatever you want, for bigger potential payouts. It's perfect for the tournament because every day there's something new, different matchups, new storylines, and more ways to get involved as the bracket unfolds. It's Tennessee, Illinois, Arizona, and someone else. I forgot the last one. I am a fan, I promise, but I did forget. But regardless, guys, go visit FanDuel.com to sign up today. That's FanDuel.com to get in on the action. And just like that, everybody, thriving and vibing back into this Friday episode of Locked On Padres and Locked On Red Sox. Be sure to reach out to us on the old YouTube, smash the like button, subscribe, do all that good stuff. You guys know how it is. Gabby, let's talk about the pitching matchups for today's game. By the time people are hopefully listening to this episode, it is Michael King versus Sonny Gray. Probably the two out of this series, out of the three games, probably the two biggest names in terms of just two matchups, right? Like both of these guys are very well known. Sonny Gray has been a very steady, consistent pitcher who's really out there, but not so far it seems. And Michael King was hurt last year, and he's a little bit new to the starting rotation thing. But what can you tell us about Sonny Gray, other than the fact that every time he goes to a major city, he seems to struggle?
Yeah, it was more of the same as you could expect in his first start of the season. I had high hopes for him going into the season. He struggled during spring training, so I think there were a lot of people who were concerned about him and how he would look going into the season. But Sonny Gray has a track record of struggling in spring training and then just miraculously turning things around when the season starts. So I was holding on to that going into his first start of the season last Saturday. But I had my concerns about him going into this season. I was like, he's only getting older. What's that going to look like for him? Had a good season last year. The Red Sox gave up some good pieces to get him. And his first start was definitely underwhelming, I would say, and definitely not the start that the Red Sox were hoping for. He only lasted 4 innings in that game. And he gave up 3 runs. So definitely a little bit shaky. The first inning was really rough for him. He just could not put guys away, was giving up base runners right and left, and he just wasn't throwing strikes for the majority of the start. His command was kind of all over the place. So that's something that I'm going to be looking for from him going into this start is, can he just maintain that control of the strike zone? Because he has a good mix of pitches that he was showcasing in that first start. He just wasn't hitting his spots, and he just was throwing the ball all over the place, and it just wasn't ideal. And I think when you look at Sonny Gray and the pitcher that he is and all that he's accomplished in his career, you want to feel like you can trust him to come out and redeem himself from his first start, but I'm not overly confident in him. I'm interested in seeing how being at Fenway and coming into a game like this, how he looks, because this is the place that he's going to be throwing a lot this year. So if he's goes out there and he kind of doesn't pitch well, for lack of a better phrase there, that's going to be tough, because we had a situation last year where we had Walker Buehler on this team and ended up having to release him later in the season because he just was struggling too much. And I really hope this doesn't turn into that situation this year with Sonny Gray. But, I do think based on the way that he's able to generate swings and misses is something that I'm looking forward to seeing from him. So hopefully he can turn on that aspect of his game a little bit more. And he just needs to have his command, because that was the biggest thing that he ran into last time, that I'm hoping that he has a little bit more control of that strike zone this time around.
Absolutely, totally understand that. And yeah, maybe it will follow suit in history. The Padres will end up picking him up just like they did Walker Buehler. We'll talk about him in a second. But when it comes to Michael King, similar storyline. Struggled really badly in spring training, 10.18 ERA. People are panicking, whatever, because unlike some other pitchers like a Sonny Gray, it's not like he's been a starting pitcher forever, right? He was very good with the Yankees, became a more of a starter later in his tenure before getting traded over to the Padres, of course, in the Juan Soto deal. And he had a really good first start, because this is what happens with spring training starts. Sometimes you should ignore them completely. He goes 5, only gives up 1 hit, did walk 4. The control wasn't totally there. Did have 6 strikeouts, no earned runs allowed, though. I think the thing with Michael King that everybody needs to watch again is just the pitch mix. This is a guy who last year, I don't know if you knew this, Gabby, he had like the 3rd worst fastball in Major League Baseball, which is not, it's never been his strongest pitch. He's more of an off-speed guy, he nips the corners, all that sort of stuff, while still getting his strikeouts, especially with his sweeper and his sinker. But he had an 8.15 slugging allowed against his fastball last year. And what I thought was interesting is, came into the first start of the year, it was his 4th most used pitch. His best season, I think it was his 2nd most used pitch, and before that it was his 3rd most. So it was interesting that he was like going completely away from it. And I'm wondering to see, and Padres fans should keep an eye on whether he does that again, because even his breakout year with the Padres, he was his first year with the Padres, actually, he was flirting with a bunch of different pitching combinations for a while until he settled on what he ended up using for the rest of the year, when he had an ERA that didn't go above 3 in any month in 2024, with the exception of the first month. So he's still figuring some things out, but I'm curious for Padres fans, definitely keep an eye on what kind of pitches he uses in this one, even more so than how he does. I just want to see what he's going to be working on for the rest of this year, but I have a lot of faith. Then for the second game, there's Randy Vasquez and Connolly Early, the 2 pitchers that everyone expected for both of our respective fan bases to have the best starts in these rotations. What can you tell us about Connolly Early?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of him. He showcased a lot last year in a really small sample size, got called up late in the season due to injury last year. And he kind of moved pretty quickly through the system, didn't spend a lot of time in AAA at all before getting called up to make his major league start. So I felt like, hopefully he had enough time to really hone in on his skills, because we're trying to make a playoff push here. But then he got called up and pitched really well in his debut. And, in the few starts he made after that, then he got placed into a position where he had to pitch at Yankee Stadium in the postseason because Lucas Giolito got hurt, who would have normally made that start. So the Red Sox were basically like, all right, kid, good luck. You're going to pitch in a place that's a really difficult place to pitch, and especially in a playoff environment. Elimination game. If we lose this game, no biggie, our season's over. So that said a lot about him and his resilience. He looked good overall in that game. The reason the Red Sox lost that game was definitely not because of him. He showed a lot of poise on the mound, and that gave me promise going into this season. So he looked really good in spring training, making it basically impossible for the Red Sox not to give him a spot on the opening day roster. He definitely has some good secondary stuff, but he's looking to really continue to hone in on those secondary pitches. But he looked really good in his first start of the season against Cincinnati. Only 1 earned run over 5 1/3 innings, 6 strikeouts, did give up a couple walks, but no home runs, which was good. So he wasn't really getting hit super hard. So he's a guy who I am looking forward to seeing continue to develop. He's kind of the type of pitcher that has really good stuff, but I am curious to see him go up against, a tough Padres lineup, which obviously hasn't been playing up to its expectations necessarily, but we know what the potential is with this lineup. And I am interested in seeing him go up against a lineup like that. He showed that he can do it against a tough Yankees lineup last year in the postseason. So I'm hoping that carries over to this year. You'll see a good pitch mix of 2 or 3 pitches primarily that he leans on. But he is working on refining a 4th. But he's still young, but looked good in his first start. So as long as that carries over again, I feel like that'll give the Red Sox a shot to win that game.
Absolutely. Hopefully it does not carry over whatsoever. And hopefully for the Padres' sake, it does carry over what Randy Vasquez did in his first start. Now, don't get me wrong. The immediate numbers, they jump out. 6 innings, only 2 hits, 3 walks, 8 strikeouts, second highest career total, second highest in a game for him in his career. Looked fantastic. Now, here's the thing. He did get a little bit lucky early on in the game. He got 2 strike 3 calls, one on Kevin McGonigal and the other on Spencer Torkelson, I believe. The McGonigal one very much was not a strike. They got lucky. There was no ABS challenge or anything. And same thing goes for the start of the inning to Torkelson. But other than that, over those two first innings, the guy looks sharp. He was getting a lot of swings and misses. And what's good about Randy Vasquez is last year, he was a BABIP, like merchant. This was a guy that just lucked out because he didn't get strikeouts. He walked everybody, didn't put the ball on the ground, somehow finished with a sub-4 ERA. It happens. But what's interesting is that has changed. His stuff plus is through the roof. He has added a lot more movement on a lot of his pitches, and his velocity is up by nearly 2 miles per hour on nearly every pitch. This is a guy who's been working tightly with Ruben Niebla, the Padres pitching coach, and with Yu Darvish, hilariously enough, has been a really big mentor figure for him. So Randy Vasquez was an obvious regression candidate, but if your actual stuff is changing and evolving, then all those numbers, you almost have to throw them out of the window from last year. So he's a really exciting guy, and because of the way he's been pitching, it's kind of why I'm actually not as worried about this Padres starting rotation as some other people, because I think when they're healthy, Pivetta, King, hopefully breakout Randy Vasquez, and Joe Musgrove, that's as solid a 4 as you get, and I'm not going to hear it unless you're the Dodgers, Marlins, or maybe Yankees sometimes, I guess. Who's the other one? Mariners. There we go. Mariners. Like, everybody is struggling to find a fifth starter, so I don't want to hear it, right? So hopefully he could keep it going, though. But last pitching matchup I wanted to talk to you about, Walker Buehler, your boy, against Ranger Suarez. Again, a lot of former Padres, Red Sox players on this team. My God. Ranger Suarez, though, one of the big offseason pickups, one of the 3 or 4 biggest, starting pitcher names available. What can you tell us about him? Because I know that I did get a few texts of people complaining and saying, this guy stinks, it's over, he's cooked.
Yeah, Ranger, that was a really exciting offseason pickup for the Red Sox. First of all, I was like, wow, they spent money and they got this guy. That's something that we haven't seen in a bit here. They actually spent money on a guy. And he's a guy who, if you really look at the postseason numbers, is somebody who could really do damage in October if the Red Sox were to make a playoff run. Of course, they have to get there first. And his first start of the season was definitely not what we were looking for. He was just getting hit 4 1/3, 7 hits, 4 earned runs, 2 home runs he gave up in the outing, 3 strikeouts and 1 walk. And the biggest problem with Ranger wasn't his stuff. It was more, he just was missing spots in the worst places. Like, he was just leaving meatballs right down the middle, and he was just kind of hanging middle too much during this outing. And we did see glimpses of what he can be in terms of his arsenal, and he definitely had good stuff. It's just more like, you just can't leave a pitch middle for some of those Astros hitters, and they'll just feed off of that. And we saw that in that game against him. His changeup in particular, which is supposed to be his best pitch, he struggled with that pitch a little bit during spring training. He struggled to really locate that pitch well in that outing. So if he can get the changeup back to where it needs to be, we will see a better outing from him this weekend. He deserves a little bit of a pass because he was one of the pitchers who came back from the World Baseball Classic and wasn't really ready to go, just wasn't really amped up enough for the season. Same with Brian Bayo. They both came back from the World Baseball Classic, and the Red Sox were like, well, they need more time to kind of get back into the swing of things. So for Ranger, I do feel like some of that does have to do with that maybe he just kind of needs to amp back up a little bit, and that hopefully now that he has a start under his belt with his new team, that hopefully things will kind of level themselves out again for him this weekend. But the stuff's absolutely there, just needs better location on a lot of those pitches, because if you leave meatballs down the middle, especially against a lineup like the Padres, they will feast on that. And that's what ultimately led to him giving up those home runs too. He was just getting hit, and it just wasn't his day.
And let me tell you, when it comes to the last Padres starter, this is a guy who is not going to be beating anybody with velocity and striking guys out necessarily. But is that necessarily a bad thing? Well, I have a lot of thoughts on that. But first, guys, let me take a second to talk to you about one of our sponsors. That is Robinhood. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you and participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets change the game. Man, it's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but I never quite had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood. Now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. Let's also give a shout out to our friends over at Indeed. And it is indeed a great sponsor, guys, because with workplace chaos and all the deadlines stacking up, it can be very hard to find the right fit for the one job that you've had sitting open forever. When the pressure's on, you need the right hire, and that means that it's a job for Indeed sponsored jobs, which helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your posts. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. Multiply that by the 25 minutes I've been talking to you guys, and that's about... Never mind. I thought I could do this in my head before we got to this ad read, but whatever. Guys, spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates to check all your boxes. And the listeners of the show, you will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Locked On Red Sox, Locked On Padres, Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And just like that, after that really harsh transition into the ad read, we are back here, Locked On Padres, Locked On Red Sox. The waiting moments, guys. Gabby just talked about our guy, Ranger Suarez. I say our guy because I have had some fun times with my friends outside Citizens Bank, just kicking back a few drinks and watching Ranger Suarez. I don't know why, but it was just a thing we would do. But Walker Buehler, guy for the Padres in this case. This is a guy who, it's not necessarily about location. It's just about staying alive, man. This is a guy who, after his Tommy John surgery, all those sort of injuries, the velocity dip isn't there. And that's what you saw in his first start. He did not throw his fastball all that much, which is kind of what you should expect from Walker Buehler at this point of his career. It was his fourth most used pitch. Instead, his knuckle curve, changeup, and cutter were his primary things. And I think that he actually showed a little bit of potential to just be a fifth starter. I really do. Or a long inning reliever, multi-inning reliever or anything like that. I thought what he was able to do is, once again, and you saw this last year, generate some soft contact. He actually put a lot of balls on the ground, and his off-speed stuff was good. However, oh God, you do see why the Red Sox cut him at points, because he's not really able to trust and just go after a guy. He's kind of got a nibble, and he hung a knuckle curve to Harrison Bader. Guy took it like 625 feet, I'm pretty sure is how far it went. It was really, really bad. So we can make some mistakes there. But for an aggressive team, I could see a world in which he could luck out, right? But I will say, based on how poorly he did last year, I am a little bit worried that he's back at Fenway and he's like, oh God. And then they're just like, oh, we know what to do here. We literally saw it last year. Or maybe it's a random revenge game, and then I get to see Boston fans raging online about, why do you do this for us? Either possibility, I'm kind of totally prepared for. It should be interesting, though. But Gabby, let me ask you.
With Buehler, it to be one extreme or the other. I think he's either going to carve up this Red Sox lineup, and people are going to be like, "Well, like you said, we're the best version of Buehler here," like when we had him, or he's just going to like freak out being back at Fenway because of bad memories that he might have there from last year, and he's just going to panic and our offense is just going to feast on him. Who knows? Maybe that'll be the game where the Red Sox really figure things out offensively. Hopefully it'll be before that. But it's interesting you say all that about Buehler, because do I remember the days of the struggling Walker Buehler, and there were base runners on, and I could just never trust him to get out of the inning. And it was just tough because he just couldn't really attack the strike zone in those situations. So I'm interested in seeing if there's a new and improved Walker Buehler, or if he runs into some of the same issues that we saw when he was pitching at Fenway.
Yeah, I feel that. We'll see. I guess we're going to find out. But Gabby, what are some other things you are looking forward to seeing from the Padres? What are the questions do you have? Because I know for the Red Sox, while you think of one, what a team. Like, what a weird team, because this is a team that I was just looking up during this. I forgot how many good offensive players this team has had over the years. I'm not even just talking about Mookie Betts. I'm not trying to be mean, but it's losing Alex Bregman. It's salary dumping Rafael Devers. I mean, let's be honest, that's kind of what it was. And then I didn't even know they had Kyle Schwarber at one point. So that's a big thing. But they do have Mr. Roman Anthony, who I know has been talk of the town and everything. But whether it be him or it be some other under the radar guys, which is the guy that you think other Padres fans should be keeping an eye out for, whether it be a bullpen arm, we didn't talk a lot about bullpen, or it be a positional player that you think either is just you feel good about them this weekend, or in general is someone to keep an eye on that maybe not everybody's talking about?
Yeah, obviously everybody loves Roman. He's put a lot of pressure on himself, and the Red Sox have put a lot of pressure on him to be the guy, kind of the heart and soul of this Red Sox lineup. And I think that's led to a lot of early season struggles from him overall. He did hit a pinch hit home run in the Red Sox Wednesday game, so that was good to see from him. But yeah, I love Roman, hopefully expecting big things from him moving forward. But yeah, I mean, this Red Sox team definitely is in a position now to where they have the chance to, if they really start playing to their potential, be a really good baseball team. They have a lot of guys who can hit for contact. There's a lot of athleticism on this team. Jarren Duran, somebody who struggled offensively last year and is kind of flying under the radar a little bit right now because he's not getting all the hits, but he's making a huge impact in other ways between the stolen bases, and he's been generating a lot of walks, and he's been patient at the plate. And I think that's one of the biggest things that people should be talking a little bit more about. He hit leadoff the other day for the first game because they had been having Roman Anthony hit leadoff previously and Duran hitting third. So I'd be interested in seeing if they have Duran hit leadoff a little bit more moving forward because he looks confident in that spot. And he's a guy who can do a lot of damage, especially on the base paths. So I would be aware of him because the reason they didn't trade him in the offseason ultimately was because they like the versatility that he provides. Even if he's not hitting a lot, he provides value in other ways that other players in this sport don't necessarily provide. So I'm looking at hopefully a big series from him. He had a good season at Fenway last year. So I'm looking forward to seeing how things go for him, kind of being back in his environment where he's comfortable. And Masa Yoshida, I mean,
yeah,
he had a big World Baseball Classic, and people were excited to kind of see him going into this season. Doesn't have the hits yet, but he has been probably the most disciplined hitter on this team so far this year. He's been making pitchers work, and he's been generating walks. And if there's a guy in this lineup who can run up a pitch count right now, it's going to be him. So he's a guy who kind of has been moving around a little bit. They don't really know where they're going to play him more moving forward because they do have an overflow of outfielders right now. So they're kind of figuring out where he's going to actually be playing and how much playing time he's actually going to get. But they do want to put him in the lineup as much as they can, especially because he's been one of the more patient hitters in this lineup when other guys are really being aggressive at the plate. So I really like the approach he's taking, and I'm sure it'll eventually lead to hits the more patient that he is. And so those hits could come maybe this weekend. We'll see. But yeah, so he's another one that I'm looking at to hopefully have a big series. And, the Red Sox bullpen was one of the best in the AL last year, and they have a lot of those guys back this year. Coming out of the pen, Garrett Whitlock is a guy who had a really dramatic outing on Wednesday. It didn't need to be really dramatic. He didn't end up giving up any runs, but lots of base traffic there and just made it as dramatic as he possibly could have. Looking to see him bounce back a little bit from that at home. But overall, Danny Colomb was a guy who the Red Sox brought in this offseason too as a high leverage reliever. He's somebody who they really trust to come in and pick up some of those late relief roles in high leverage spots. So keep an eye on him. Hasn't looked his best to start the season. Part of that could again be it's early. But if there's a big moment and they need to bring somebody in high leverage in this series, look to him to potentially be somebody who they could turn to. So those are players who I'd say early on this season haven't been talked about as much because they're making an impact in ways that aren't as noticeable and as obvious, I would say.
Totally feel that. And I think that when it comes to the Padres, the biggest names, I think I'm expecting a little bit from Tatis this weekend. He been hitting the ball hard. He looks okay. It's just he's been struggling and he's been getting a little bit unlucky. But Robo Laureano is the name to keep an eye on. This is a dude who struggled for a long time. And I think that people look at and they say, okay, he had one good year last year. But before the season started, over his last 199 games, this is a guy who's hitting 280. He had 36 home runs. And if you want to get more advanced, 19th best WRC plus among all active players. This is 3 separate teams that he did it before. From the who was it? The Braves, the A's, and then I'm blanking on the last one for some reason. Where did he play last year? Wherever it was. Oh, Orioles. There we go. The Orioles. That's 3 separate teams, 3 separate ballparks that he's been mashing for so far. The best offensive player for the Padres. He's got 2 home runs so far. He probably could have had 3. Got a little bit unlucky there. This dude is legit. Maybe not hitting 400 Aaron Judge level numbers, nothing like that. But this is a guy who I think people are still underestimating because he had such a bad stretch that he is absolutely a hitter. And I'm curious to see if Craig Stan moves him up in the lineup. Instead of having Xander Bogaerts batting second, maybe Laureano is batting second. Maybe they move Xander Bogaerts down, so that'll be interesting. And then I don't really have anyone for the bullpen because everyone in this Padres bullpen is really, really talented. And I mean literally everyone, whether it be obviously Mason Miller. Jeremiah Estrada is super talented, but has been weird lately. But do not be surprised if he comes in and just gets 3 strikeouts and you're like, oh my God, that guy's that's your 4th best reliever, that type of thing. Bradley Rodriguez, really promising young rookie. Adrian Monajon, who's awesome. He is the most nervous looking great pitcher you will ever see. I will say that. This man will perspire. I don't know what the weather's going to be like this weekend. I haven't checked, but you'll see, he looks like a mess when he's on the mound. And you look at his ERA the past 2 years, this is one of the most valuable relievers in baseball. It's hilarious. That dude's going to get paid this offseason. And then you've got some other guys to throw in there. It's a dynamic bullpen that hasn't quite had its moment to shine yet because the Padres have always been down. So I think people have been forgetting, but this is absolutely, these teams I think are more similar than we realize. Maybe not in terms of their offseason arcs. Padres are out here maybe getting sold in a few days, right? They're totally different. While the Red Sox are selling away their players, totally different stuff. But when it comes to just right now, bad offense, weird rotation, I'm curious. They're both great bullpens, so I think it's going to be a really fun series, especially for me. I get to watch it during lunch, and I can't wait.
That's awesome. Yeah. And, it's interesting you brought up lineup placement. That's a big thing with this Red Sox team that we've seen so far in this season. I think Alex Cora is trying to kind of shift people around a little bit and see what might work and what might not work. Willie Abreu's been the best hitter on this team. He's been consistently hitting in the 5 hole. I'd be curious to see if they move him up a little bit. Maybe move Trevor Story down because he's been really struggling as the 2 hitter. Yeah. Are some of these guys going to find their stride? That's the biggest thing I'm looking at is can they find their stride offensively? I would say that's the biggest storyline here for the Red Sox going into this series, but I think it'll be a really fun series. I mean, for the Padres, there's a lot of high expectations on them. There's a ton of talent there. Yeah. Why do you think that the offense in general has been struggling to start the season? Is there a specific thing you can pinpoint? Because ours definitely is more the offensive approach as a whole with this group.
I think it's that some guys are aging, especially in the case of Manny Machado. But I think that I still have faith that they could do it. They've just had this issue of being a very high variance team when it comes to high leverage situations. Last year they were 6th batting average in high leverage situations. Year before that they were 1st, and they've had disastrous years. In 2023 being the most famous one after bringing in Juan Soto. You have him for a full year. You have Bogaerts first full year, and they refused time and time again to drive in any runs. So are they having a regression to the mean in those situations? We're hoping not, because it's hard to just consistently win all these games because you got the big hit in the 8th inning or later or whatever it is, right? So that's the big question for the Padres. And I think we're wondering do they have enough? Because I know a lot of people like to get on Preller for not building out enough depth. I'm not worried about the Castellanos and the Andujar and all that stuff. Xander Bogaerts hasn't been hitting well. Manny Machado hasn't been hitting well. Jackson Burrell has been doing better, but they have not been playing like superstars and consistent superstars. So for me, it's more of a yeah, sure. But what other team has great 7, 8, 9 hitters that you're like, oh yeah, I love that this guy's up? What other team has that? The Dodgers? Congrats. Nobody else has that.
Yeah, maybe just them.
Yeah, there are sometimes, not always, there are sometimes critiques of this Padres team that I feel like you could make of it. Oh, their number 5 starter. Yeah, okay. Well, who do the Red Sox have right now? No, I'm not even trying to be mean. Who is the 5 star of the Red Sox? It's
technically
Oviedo, Patrick Sandoval.
Right now, well, Patrick Sandoval's still hurt. Oviedo came in relief of Ranger Suarez. Technically, they consider Brian Bayo the 5 starter right now. I think that'll change.
Okay.
He made the 5th start in the rotation so far. But again, I think the World Baseball Classic was a factor in that. They didn't feel like he was fully ready to go for that opening series. So they could change things around a little bit, I think, in terms of who pitches where. Obviously, Garrett Crochet staying as the number 1 starter. But I think in terms of everybody else, it's really going to depend on how guys look throughout the course of the season.
Last thing for you before we head out. I have not been on Twitter as much lately. Are you familiar with the girl who does the crocheting for crochet thing? I saw this last year. Is she still killing it out there? Because I'm not on Twitter. I haven't seen it.
She is. Yeah. She posted about it on opening
Love
day.
To see that.
Like, I'm back at it. I think it's like the coolest thing ever.
Great bit.
Great bit. That she has that skill because I don't. So
yeah, just sometimes you see a good internet bit that you're jealous of. And you're like, even if Garrett Crochet was on the Padres, I feel like I wouldn't have thought of just like doing that. I know I'm in Jersey and it's in Petco. I just would have been like, no, I can't crochet. I used to do lanyards. I made a motorcycle out of a lanyard once. It's a true story.
Really?
Accidentally. Yeah, I'm a dumb kid. I'm just putting things in that. And all of a sudden I made like a motorcycle thing, like out of Akira. Like it was a motorbike thing from like a sci-fi movie. I was really proud of it. I got to find that one day because it was like the greatest accidental masterpiece ever. But Gabby, this has been a lot of fun. Cannot wait to see how this series pans out. I imagine we'll be texting a bunch about whatever weirdness happens in there. But everybody, go check out Locked On Padres and Locked On Red Sox. And for me, you can also email lockedonpadres@gmail.com if you want to have your answers. You want to have your questions answered on Monday's mailbag show. Gabby will be back as well as myself on Monday to recap both of these series. Should be a blast, Gabby. Any final words?
Go Red Sox, of course, is my final word. Hopefully we can turn things around this weekend.
I feel that. Until next time, stay safe, my Friar faithful homies, and stay redonkulous, my Red Sox brothers and sisters. Until next time, take care.